Hello, this is Mr. Bowman with another Mr. Bowman's Fireside History Chats without the fireside in history under 5 minutes. What we're going to do is we're going to do a real quick review on the events leading up to the American Revolution. So let's get started. On your packet we talk a lot about the Navigation Acts. The Navigation Acts are laws passed by England to regulate colonial trade. And one of the big things that we remember from the Navigational Acts is that for a very long time they weren't enforced, and we call that salutary neglect. And the colonists kind of went about their own business in terms of their economy. And the reason why they did not really enforce them right away is because it wasn't high on the priority list and everybody was kind of making money. It won't be until after the French and Indian War, where the pennies need to be counted, that they start enforcing some of these laws. The French and Indian War, also known as the 7 Years' War, is between the French, the country of France, and Britain. And the colonists are involved, and Native American alliances are involved, and they're fighting in North America, at least, over a disputed territory called the Ohio Valley. So not only are they fighting for land purposes, but also the economic venues that are located within the Ohio Valley, which is primarily the fur trade. Both sides had Indian alliances, depending on what groups of Indians they had economic ties to. But in the end, the French are losers, and so are their Indian allies. The British are victorious, along with the colonists. They gained a lot of land in North America and into Canada, but at a great cost. One of the larger effects that come out of the French and Indian War is Britain has a very large war debt that they're going to have to address rather quickly. Pontiac's Rebellion is an event between white settlement British soldiers and an organized group of Native Americans that are fighting, they're waging war against this encroachment into Indian territory. And the big thing that comes out of Pontiac's Rebellion is the British government sees North America and how big it is now, and their inability to provide proper protection. So they establish a proclamation line called the Proclamation Act of 1863 that sets a boundary on Western settlement for colonial settlers. The British do it for protective reasons, for security reasons, but obviously from the perspective of the colonists, they view this in a very negative light. They feel that they fought a war to obtain this territory, and they wanted to expand westward. So you have two very conflicting perspectives there. Then we move on to the taxation policies of the British government. They need to raise revenue, money used by the government. That's their paycheck, and they use that revenue to operate with and provide services. The first tax in this taxation period is the Sugar Act, and this is really it's a indirect tax on trade, and it was received very surprisingly to the British government's dislike in a very, very negative way. It angered colonial merchants because it was on a trade item. It didn't affect everybody in the colonies, but specifically kind of targeted trade colonial merchants. Pamphlets were passed out. Colonists in general felt they were being violated because there was personal property that was seized by British officials with due process, without due process. It was a real unfortunate situation, and one that was completely unforeseen by the British government, thinking that the colonies would not react this way. The colonists started to correspond with one another, organize. They called it the Committees of Correspondence, groups that would meet together to talk about what the colonies are doing toward this taxation. The next significant taxation item is the Stamp Act. The Stamp Act is the first direct tax on the colonies, where it taxed pretty much all paper goods with a stamp. The reaction to that was one of even more anger. Burning stamp collectors in effigy, tar and feathering. You have the development of Stamp Act Congress. You have the development of Sons of Liberty. And this is where you first start hearing the coined rallying cry of the colonists that there is no taxation without representation, because from the colonist point of view, there are no colonists in Parliament. And in order to be directly taxed, then there should be representation, and of course from their point of view there is none. From the England's point of view, it's virtual representation, that Parliament represented all British subjects. And the Stamp Act, after a lot of problems, will end up being repealed or cancelled. Then you have the Townshend Acts, the Townshend duties, and then we will have that lead into the Boston Massacre. I'm going to kind of run through these pretty quick. The Boston Massacre is the one of the hotbeds for patriotic activity, or activity in terms of rebellions against the crown, happened in the big cities like Boston, New York, Philadelphia. So there are troops stationed in Boston to kind of keep the peace. And the local collection of Bostonians end up harassing, antagonizing the British sentries, or the soldiers that were located in King Street, Boston Square. And unfortunately, the situation gets out of hand, and British soldiers fire upon the civilians, killing 5. And that incident obviously is used with great timing as propaganda for the Continental Rebels, the Sons of Liberty, this group of revolutionaries that want independence to use against, supposed British tyranny or abuse of power. The Tea Act is the tea tax is the whole situation is seen by the colonists as another attempt by the British government to illegally tax the colonists into buying cheap tea. Leads to the Boston Tea Party, where it really is the Sons of Liberty in open rebellion of the British taxation, where they dump the tea into Boston Harbor. In other places, the ships were even sent back with the tea, or they were left the tea to rot in the boats in the harbor. But this is where the situation from the King and Parliament's point of view, it becomes emotional. And what they're going to do is they're going to punish the colonies for this very overt disobedience. And they're going to pass the Coercive Acts, or the Intolerable Acts. They're going to close Boston Harbor until Boston pays the money back for the lost tea. They're going to discontinue some of the colonial legislatures. They're going to disallow town meetings to happen. And they are also going to allow the quartering of troops in people's homes. And the effect of that is a tremendous amount of sympathy for the colony of Massachusetts by all the other colonies, because this directly affected their colony. But it also prompted the organization of the First Continental Congress to meet in the year 1774. First Continental Congress would meet. There would be delegates from 12 out of the 13 colonies, and they would try to get together to organize an outlined response to British activities and taxations. So some of the things they came up with was they're gonna write a letter, a declaration of rights and grievances, and send it to the king. They were going to organize and maintain and correspond the boycotts that were happening in the colonies, and along the same lines with the non-importation of certain goods from England, and they were also going to set a time to have like a follow-up meeting or a Second Continental Congress. And I want to let you know that all the delegates there in 1774, they didn't want to leave England, they didn't want to break away from the English Empire, and in less than 1 year those opinions will change. And before the Second Continental Congress can meet in 1775, there's a very, very important event that happens that really pushes this whole situation to the point where they don't seem like they can go backwards, and that is the shot heard around the world, or Lexington and Concord. In April 1775, the British soldiers that were stationed in Boston under General Gage were given very simple orders to go to some towns in the interior to show kind of the might and the force of the British Army. And they were going to arrest some colonial rebels, and they were also going to confiscate some weapons that were supposedly being stockpiled in the towns of Lexington and Concord. And this is where we get Paul Revere's Ride. The British are met in Lexington Green by Lexington militiamen called Minutemen. They were told to disperse. Obviously they were dispersing, and somewhere in that translation there was a shot fired, then there were shots fired, there were men killed on both sides, and really this becomes the start or the spark of the American Revolution. The Second Continental Congress then will meet in 1775, and they waste no time in really becoming their own self-government. They start making treaties with Native American tribes. They elect to put together a Continental Army with a commander of George Washington. And you know, they really start getting things organized in that respect. And I know I haven't talked about Battle of Bunker Hill. I don't want to understate the importance of Thomas Paine's Common Sense, which was written in 1776, that was published and then came out in 1776 in the Declaration of Independence. But that will be for my next Mr. Bowman's History in 5 minutes or less. So, good luck with your test. Thanks for joining me. See you soon.